Chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga. We have divided the chapter into two parts for the convenience and the condensed form of videos. This episode will include Gita Dhyana Shloka, Introduction, context of the chapter, the various stages Arjuna goes through, and decoding the Gita Upadesh Part 1. Om Vasudevasutam Devam Kansachanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Salutations to Lord Shri Krishna, the world teacher, son of Vasudeva, the destroyer of Kamsa and Chanura, the supreme bliss of Devaki. Welcome everyone. Welcome back to Vedic Treasure. This is Ritika Manoj. If you're new to the channel and you would like to visit our previous episodes, please click the link below in the description box. So, let's welcome Lord Shri Krishna in this chapter and see what he has to advise. This chapter is titled Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya means self-knowledge, and yoga here means the state of mind required to attain this knowledge. So this chapter is titled so as it presents Atma Jnanam as the permanent solution to the problem diagnosed in the first chapter, samsara. As we have seen, by the end of the first chapter, Arjuna is immersed in grief, shoka, as a result of his attachments, raga, culminating into moha or delusion, which leads him to take wrong decision of quitting. When the pain is mild, we take a painkiller and it goes off. But what happens when the pain intenses? We need a doctor's help, and here we take the help of Krishna to cure our samsara. The second chapter is the most important of all the chapters, as Lord Krishna condenses the teachings of the Gita in this chapter. When the first chapter was a preparatory ground to infuse the actual teachings of the Gita, which begins in this chapter. Now let's break down the verses given in this chapter into the four main topics covered here. Verses 1 to 10 gives us the various stages of mind Arjuna goes through before attaining the real teaching. From verses 11 to 38, Gita Upadesh begins, that is the Sankhya philosophy. From verses 39 to 53, Lord Krishna introduces Karma Yoga briefly. From verses 54 to 72, describes the various characteristics of a Sthita Prajna or a steady intellect. Now let's begin with the context of the chapter, where we unfold the various stages Arjuna goes through. So, first we will understand those stages and then go and decode the verses. The first stage is to be aware of our suffering or samsara. Most of the time, people just ignore certain indications of suffering and then accumulate and pile up, which later on becomes intense and difficult to handle. That is why it is very important to introspect each and every early indications of our grief so that we are well prepared to manage it. The second stage involves a sincere longing to get out of this problem as soon as possible. And in this case, Arjuna tries to quit the war, which is also called viparya in Sanskrit. Generally, in such intense situations, people tend to get impatient and want to get rid of the problem as soon as possible. So in this hurry, they tend to make a mistake, which is not advisable. The third stage is samshaya in Sanskrit. That means doubting one's own ability to solve the problem, which leads to the fourth stage, where we become aware of our helplessness, which is also called karpanyam in Sanskrit. That's when we surrender to a supreme guru who helps us to solve the problem of samsara, and we become a Sharanagati. And here, through the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna helps us come out of this samsara. Now, let's delve into the verses from 2 to 10 and see the drama unfold. As we all know, by the end of the first chapter, Arjuna was speaking a lot, and overcome by his grief, he fell on his chariot, throwing away his Gandivam, and completely in tears. His eyes were blurred. But still, he didn't sought help from Krishna. And that is why Lord Krishna chose to be silent. But looking at his weakness, Krishna decided to break the ice by uttering these following words.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kutastva-kashmalamidam Vishame samupastitam Anarya Jushtam Asvargyam Akirtim Karma Arjuna.
Lord Krishna said, "O Arjuna, from where did this mental dejection come to you at this untimely moment? From where is this such low thinking, depression coming to you, who is known for the courage and warfare?" And he further adds,
Klaibyam asmagama partha naitattvayupapadyate Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam Tyaktvotishtha param tapa.
Lord Krishna strongly criticizes Arjuna and says to give up this unmanliness and cowardliness and get up and do your duty. Lord Krishna rebukes Arjuna in order to whip him into action. Now let's see what Arjuna says.
Arjuna vacha Katham bhishma maham samkhye Dronancha madhusudhana Ishubhi pratiyotsyami Puja harvari sudhana.
So what did Arjuna say? Here comes the stage one, samsara. Arjuna says, "O Krishna, how do I fight against Bhishma and Drona with arrows?
Guruna हत्वा हि महानुभावान् श्रेयो भोक्तुं भैक्षमपीह लोके हत्वार्थकामांस्तु गुरुनिहैव भुञ्जीय भोगान् रुधिरः प्रदिग्धान्.
Arjuna perceives killing his gurus as papam or wrong deed. He independently analyzes the situation and suggests to take sannyasa or to quit the war. This wrong decision is viparya.
न चैतद्विद्मः कतरन्नो गरीयो यद्वा जयेम यदि वा नो जयेयुः यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामस्ते वस्थिता प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्राः.
Moreover, we do not know out of these two courses which is better, whether we conquering them or they conquering us. With this shloka, Arjuna enters the stage of doubt, samshaya.
कार्पण्यदोषोपहत स्वभाव पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसमुद्यचेताः यच्छ्रेयस्यानशितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यतेऽहं शादिमां त्वां प्रपन्नम्.
Arjuna says, my mind is empowered by helplessness and my intellect is deluded by the confusion of righteousness. I do not know what is dharma and what is adharma. Now I am asking you to tell me certainly what is good for me, as I am not in a position to decide, and I surrender to you and become your student. With an open mind, I am fully prepared to walk on the path you show. In the next two shlokas, Arjuna quantifies his sorrows in front of Krishna and expresses his confusion of whether to fight this war or to flee to the forest. He was confused as he was not ready to do both. So we now know that the right decisions are made by right judgments. Right judgment requires discriminative power. This discriminative power is lost when we face samsara, and that is what Arjuna was experiencing intensely. Hence, Arjuna discovers his problem and is now completely aware that he is unable to solve his problem himself and reaches out to Krishna for his help. So this begins Gita Upadesh from Krishna, and that's the Sankhya philosophy. Are you grieving? Are you suffering? Is there something bothering you? Are you sorrowful about something? Krishna smilingly addresses the world through Arjuna and begins this eye-opening journey of Gita Upadesh. Verse 11 is considered to be the most important verse in the entire Gita. As in this verse, Krishna condenses the entire Gita Shastra. So let's sow the seed of knowledge, self-knowledge from this verse. Hereafter, Krishna transforms from a friend to a Jagadguru. He says that if you are sorrowful or grieving, it signifies that you are ignorant and not wise. And self-ignorance is the root cause of all suffering. It is said in Sanskrit, Atma Ajnanam samsara karanam, atma jnanam, moksha karanam. That means self-ignorance is the root cause of suffering and self-knowledge is the cause of liberation. So let's quickly listen to the verse.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Ashocyananvashocastvam Pragyavadasha bhashase Gatasunnagatasunscha Nanu sochanti pandita.
The Lord smilingly said, "You are grieving for those who should not be grieved for. At the same time, you are talking the words of the wise, but wise men do not grieve for the living or the dead." A smiling Krishna indicates a guru free from the problem of samsara or suffering. A guru who is sakshi bhava, that is a witness form, and asangat form, that is non-attached to people or things. Krishna was quiet all this while as Arjuna wasn't ready to listen. And once Arjuna was ready to listen, Krishna takes over. So here, Krishna takes 3-step remedy for Arjuna's or our samsara problem. They are the philosophical approach, the ethical approach, and the worldly approach. Here in this verse 11, Krishna teaches the philosophical approach. Let's understand the message Krishna is giving us all through this verse. Krishna is saying, when you are grieving for someone living or dead, or the thought of just losing the person, as in the case of Arjuna, Krishna says that you have not understood the Gita. He says, do not grieve. I repeat, do not grieve. We are all playing some role or the other. Either we are a son, daughter, wife or a husband, father or a mother, grandfather, grandmother, great-grandfather or mother. And there are many professional roles. Out of them, when we are suffering, who is suffering is the question. Is it the role or you? We have to understand this one particular thing, that we are not the role. We are something beyond the role. This brings us to the 2 entities, Atma and Anatma, which we have previously discussed in detail in the previous episodes. A human being has 2 entities, Atma and Anatma. So the Anatma element or the entity is what deals with the role of a human being. What role and what stage the person is going through. And so who am I? I am someone other than this role or Anatma entity. That is Atma or the witness. So whenever we find ourselves in some kind of sorrow, grief, let's affirm ourselves that there is no real sorrow. So from verses 11 to 25, Krishna explains these entities in detail and discriminates between the Anatma and the Atma. The Atma Swarupam. That is called the Jnana Yoga or the Sankhya Yoga, which we will continue in the next episode. Till then, you can review the previous episode where we had discussed about Atma and Anatma. We'll put the link in the description box for that. At the end, I would like to add that sorrows can be due to physical ailment, but that can be dealt with medical help. But there is a huge section of mental trauma which we are all creating for ourselves, which needs to be dealt at the right time. That is why it is most important to be aware of our suffering. Hence, Krishna says that there is no real reason of our sorrows. It is just that we have taken our roles very seriously. So, just experience the shift of thoughts when we affirm this advice given by Krishna. Thank you and stay tuned for the next episode.
ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहैः तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः ॐ शान्ति